Welcome into the Inside Bassmaster Podcast, episode 120 or so. And the Inside Bassmaster Podcast is presented by Black Rifle Coffee Company. And this is our Pattern of the Month segment. I'm your host, Ronnie Moore, and my co-host is always Kyle Jesse joining us. And our special guest for the month of April is Bassmaster Elite Series Pro Brock Mosley. And Brock, it's April fishing, and I feel like it's now your time to shine. The last few years of your Bassmaster Elite Series career, you've gotten off to really good starts, and most of it is because of your work you've done in late March to, early May, that whole month of April. And so with two elites in April, I know you're chomping at the bit to get going there.
Well, Ronnie, April to me is the funnest month to fish. You got so much going on. Things are warming up. Things are turning green. And, man, the fish just start biting. It's a fun time to be on the water.
Brock, you've been outspoken about how much you hate fishing in Florida and hate starting the year down there. How much of a sense of a relief is it when you get to this point of the season and it's like you don't have to deal with that anymore?
Well, I want to have a correction on that. It's not that I hate Florida. It's that I hate the St. Johns River. And it's not nice to hate a place, but when you're 0 for 5 on a place, you can start to hate it just a little bit. But I love going to Okeechobee and Seminole. Seminole is the one that it's scary. Like you can not do well there very, very easily. So that one scared me a little bit, but technically I guess I survived that one. And out of my 8 years, this is the best start I've gotten off to in my career.
Yeah, I was just looking at that. You're 29th place or so in Angler of the Year. And, normally you probably aren't fond of the people that you're behind in the points race. They're all Elite Series pros and you want to beat them. But does it drive you even crazier that your roommate is leading Angler of the Year and is probably the hottest angler in the sport after 2 Elite Series events? I kind of feel like, hey, you were the third rung on the ladder in our roommate situation, and now you've just jumped to the top. This is done. It's time for us to shine again.
I'm glad for him. It drives me nuts sometimes because he just the way he does things, he just floats along in life, I guess, so to speak. And I'm like, how does that even happen? But I'm happy for him. For a while there, we were kind of worried about, him. He was right on the cut line of getting, having to worry about getting cut every year if he had a bad finish every year. And now, we don't have to worry about it. He's leading Angler of the Year, so he's cut. He's on his own. But I'm happy for him. Especially him winning the first Elite of the season after losing his title sponsor around so late in the year. It was kind of exciting, kind of funny. He's like a little brother. So everybody's like, man, are you jealous? I was like, I would only be jealous to him if I finished second to him. But if I finish third or lower, somebody else is going to beat me. So as long as I'm not finishing second to him, I'm not jealous of him.
Brock, let's talk about the fishing a little bit. Obviously, pattern of the month here, talking about April. Something, that you have every time we talk about fantasy picks, every time we talk about fishing in the springtime, anytime it's a moving bait deal, Brock Mosley's name is one of the first ones that comes up. I mean, you talk about vibrating jigs, spinner baits, you name it. When you're fishing in April, it seems like there's kind of a split of guys. There's your guys that are going to act, just right off the bat, go straight to the bank and go looking for them, try to find fish on beds. And then there's the guys that are going to try to find, a reaction bait type deal. Like, what is your approach when you get to a body of water in the month of April?
Well, no matter where we go all across the country, I'm a firm believer in try to figure out a lake the way you like to catch them, the most confident. Don't go to, like the classic, for instance. I didn't want to go to Tellico and try to catch them, doing the Demiki rig like Gussie was, because I don't do that around home. That would be something out of my comfort zone. So I tell people to try to break down a place, doing what they're most comfortable with, because it gives you confidence. And to me, that's chunking and winding, covering a lot of water. Because, growing up, that's what I had to do in Mississippi to get 6, 7, 8 bites a day, because that's what you're fishing for, and they weigh what they weigh. So, that's the way I'm comfortable doing. And it's just like I said, April's a fun time. You got fish that are getting more active. They're getting hungry. A lot of them coming off the spawn. right into the shad spawn. They're feeding up, so they get more aggressive, and it's a lot more fun to catch.
Kyle and I were talking about this before you joined the call, and it's on that color selection. Is there a prime time, time of year? Is it how long the days are? Is it the specific water temperature, the body of water, from where we see guys throwing red crankbaits religiously, and then all of a sudden it flips the script and it's shad colored baits? Because even earlier, a month earlier, you're throwing red and you catch a fish and they have a tail in their mouth. That's not a crawfish, but we stick with that red for some reason. So is there a certain point, is it this month, where you begin to change and get to more of the natural colors?
Kind of like the rule of thumb of throwing top water. Most guys wait till it gets to 60 degrees. I'll throw the red colors until the water gets in the upper 50s. Seems like when they start getting on the verge of spawning, that they kind of lay off the red color baits for me. And then that, like I said, that's kind of when I'll swap the top water as soon as I put the red ones down, and that's what I like to do every year. But generally we go straight from red to to shad colors, because usually when they're done spawning, they're ready to feed back up, and that's when the shad spawns should be kicking off.
You mentioned top waters there. That was something I was going to bring up. Obviously, Neely Henry a couple of years ago, obviously had some success doing that. Obviously, that was first week of May, pretty close to April, of course, still. You know, a lot of guys, you have to wait all during the winter and the early spring to throw a top water. Do you have the magic, water temperature that you'll pick up a top water? And then two, like, what is your approach at it? Because I know a lot of guys, when you're talking about early topwater fishing, maybe a popper, slow, fishing it slower, a buzz bait, fishing it as slow as you can. What is kind of your topwater approach? Because I'm glad you brought that up.
Growing up around Mississippi, Ross Barnett's kind of the center of our fishing, and it's always been a deal there that when the water gets to 52 degrees, you can start throwing a buzz bait, and that's cold water. But if you get a couple bites, they're going to be the right bites. So growing up around doing that, I'm not afraid to throw it during colder months. But generally for your pop-Rs and your walking style baits, I'll wait till the water gets in the upper 60s, just the confidence deal. But I'm not afraid to throw that buzz bait, as long as that water's starting to warm up. And it's one of them deals where you kind of have to let the fish tell you, how interested they are in it. Pay a lot of attention to detail. Did the fish, if you're throwing a buzz bait, did the fish just kind of suck it under, or did it explode on it? So you have to pay attention to little details like that. But that's, everybody loves a good topwater bite.
So, Ronnie, if you don't mind me asking this real quick on the buzzbait talk. So this is something me and a couple of my buddies have argued back and forth about. When you're talking about springtime, like pre-spawn, around the spawn buzzbaits, do you have a color preference, like black or white, and or do you throw a skirt on the back of your buzzbaits? So I know a lot of guys like that bigger profile, keep a skirt on there during the springtime, as where like once you get to May, June, you go to the soft plastic style. Do you have a preference on that?
Every angler is different, but to me, the first thing I do is cut the skirt off and put, a piece of plastic on. To me, the plastic gives it a bigger profile for the fish to kind of connect to. So I'll always like, putting a piece of plastic on mine. We seen it actually play last week at the Classic. Cobb caught several of his on it, and that's actually what I did on day 3. I caught me a couple of keepers, and I thought, well, man, if I'm going to get back in this thing and catch a big bag, I think I can do. Buzzbait would probably be the only way I could do it. And I went way up Tellico and threw a buzzbait all or half the day and never had a bite. But that's the way it goes. When you go swinging for something like that. But I generally like, a piece of plastic on mine. Color preference, usually it's whatever I can get my hands on first. The one I got tied on now, it has a white piece of plastic on it. The head's black and the blade's black. And it's just because I picked up a white piece of plastic first. So I'm not too big. I heard Swindle say one time he don't think, as far as colors go, there's only about 3 different colors. And I try to keep that as simple as possible when I'm especially choosing topwater baits.
How do you go about deciphering, we think about it. I had a college event a couple years ago when I was fishing. that did this. I rolled up and the water temperature was 65 degrees, and I was like, sweet, they should be most definitely on bed. But what it was last week it was 70 and it dropped down to 50 and then it rose up through the week. So like it was confusing. They were already spawning and they were actually pulling off, that kind of thing. So fast forward to this year at Lake Eufaula for the Open, we had literally late February and it got so warm that there was fish headed to the bank and the water temperature was in the 70s, but there were very limited fish on the bank and there were still so many more pre-spawn than that. So when you get to a lake and you haven't been there, you guys have the month off limits, and you see a fish on the bed or you see a fish out deep or you see a fish on a bladed jig that you catch, how many fish does it take you to decide actually what these fish are doing? Because it does seem like there could be a couple doing the spawn deal or up shallow, but the majority of the population is not there yet. And how do you figure that out? How many fish does it take for you?
You know, here in the South, we'll have, one day it'll be 80 degrees. Like this week, for instance, I mean, it's supposed to be 85 degrees here today. And then by Friday, it's not even supposed to get to 60 degrees for a high. And I think a lot of that has to do with, here in April, we have a lot. I mean, you'll go fishing and there'll be fish in all three phases. Most lakes we go to, which I don't even know if I've ever been to very many lakes, that all the fish go spawn at one time. You get them trickling in, and like you said, there's some that wants to go ahead and get it over with. They'll be up there, when the water first gets to 60 degrees or in that 60-degree area doing their thing. And then, like you said, you'll have a cold front come in and knock it back down. And we actually seen that at Chickamauga last year. Those fish were right on the verge of spawning, and then we had that colder weather come in, and it just kind of pushed them back. And it won't push them back far, if they're on like a laydown trying to spawn at the very root of it, and they'll just slide back down to the very end of it. And that's kind of the way I caught them at Chickamauga last year. And we have that. I mean, like you said, our weather is just a seesaw, but April is a big month where you'll have fish in all three phases. I actually seen some fish on the bed yesterday, and I'm sure where those fish were at, there was fish spawning there over a month ago. So it's just you have to keep that in mind when you go to a place, and it takes you a while. You'll catch some fish that are spawned out, have sores on them, and then you'll catch one that's full of eggs, and you just really have to pay attention to those kind of details.
I gotta mention, I don't think it's fair to call that cold front at Chickamauga just a cold front. I think that was basically Alaska weather there for the last 2 days of that.
It got cold. It got cold, and it was sleeting and snowing on us a little bit one of those days of competition. But it's a lot more fun fishing in those conditions when you're catching them.
Sure, yeah. Way less fun when you're shooting photos and sitting there still as can be. So I want to play a scenario by you. So obviously, Mississippi guy, used to fishing dirty water. So, if you're fishing down the bank, you're fishing high percentage areas with moving baits, not getting bites. You get kind of clued into the fact that those fish might be actively spawning, hence the reason they're maybe not going to eat a moving bait. What are some of your go-tos as far as like blind bed fishing? Like if you think these fish are not biting because they are actively, on bed and not, active, what are some of your go-tos just to slow down and, bed fish without, visibly seeing them?
I think the best bait of all time for that situation is the Yamamoto Senko. And we've seen guys, whether they're throwing their own versions of stick baits, but whether you're rigging it up Texas rig or wacky rig or weightless, however you do it, to me that is the best all-time bed fishing bait without actually visually seeing them. And you really have to slow down a little bit for it, which is not my style. But when I'm getting bit, I can slow down. But if I'm not doing that, and I'm not afraid to throw a buzz bait or some kind of top water, they like if you throw in something over them and you can't necessarily see them, then it drives them nuts, and they'll at least show themselves to you. A lot of times, they may not actually commit to the bait. And then of course, the chatterbait, the bladed jig, that's my deal. But the Senko for sure is the best, bed fishing bait in my opinion, without actually looking at them.
You are one of those guys that, it's known. I've talked to, every Elite Series pro, and if I asked half of them, who the hardest working anglers on the Elite Series, a lot of them will say you, just based on your practice style. You're always out there first to the ramp, and you're Tyler Rivette's even said, Brock has said that he'll come up to the ramp to check out, and if my truck's still there, he'll keep practicing until I take out, because he's always the last one off the water. In April, it seems like fish are changing so much that you could be in a hoodie and bibs in the morning and a sun shirt and shorts in the afternoon or evening. When you're fishing that long day and you're staying out there all the way till dark, are there things you learn in the last hour or two of practice that really help you get a mindset for the next couple days? Things that people may miss. Yeah, we don't fish till 5 or 6 in the evenings for Elite Series events, but if it's staying warmer that late into the evening, does it tell you something for the next day or the next trend? And it kind of keeps you see some things that other people might not see out there.
Everybody practices different, has their own style, and whatever works for them. Some guys think that if you find something after 3 o'clock in a practice day, it's not going to help you, and I don't necessarily agree with that. And I can kind of turn back to Neely Henry a couple of years ago. I struggled I caught some fish early in practice, and then when the rains came and the flood came and the water came up, and it just completely washed what I had figured out. I mean, it blew it out. And then the last day and a half or so of practice, I was really struggling. And I figured something out in the last 30 minutes of practice right before dark. And it actually led me to leading the tournament after day one and going on to a top 10. And I figured that out, like I said, in the last 30 minutes of practice. But one reason I always struggle at St. John's River is because we usually have an off day there. And usually we'll be fishing in cold weather during practice, and I'll figure something out. And we'll have that off day, and it's sunny and 75 during the off day, and everything completely changes, and those fish go up to the bank. And I always struggle to either relocate them or figure something else out. And that's what gets me every year at St. John's. So I was one of the guys that was completely against having an off day because I like keeping up with the fish all through practice. But yeah, as those longer days, you kind of keep up with the fish better. But one reason I spend, so much time on the water in practice, I never get tired of it. I'm not there. I'm not spending money to go over there and sit in a Airbnb or a hotel for 3 or 4 hours every afternoon. I'm there to fish. I don't get to fish much when I'm at home because I have kids now. And some of the guys will see that in a few years. So when I'm out there practice, unless it's hot, I don't do well in 100-degree weather, but I'll stay out there as long as I can because I don't get tired of it. I'm having fun. I'm putting that puzzle together is what I love. So when I'm doing something I love, I never get tired of it unless I'm hot.
So what you're saying is you're looking forward to the Sabine River in June this year.
Well, I like that the Sabine River has been good to me. So
well, see, Kyle, he's the Sabine in June, though. He normally has a 2-hour run each afternoon back to the rest. So he's cool anyway.
Cooled off.
Now, I fished 2 elites at Sabine, and I've made championship Sunday both times. One of them I didn't run 2 hours for, and it was in June. But it's the water I was fishing that year in June was 94 degrees though. So if the water's that hot, it's real hot.
Is there a blade combination on your spinnerbait that matters when it's 75 versus 95-degree water?
Oh yeah, it was weird. It was a funny deal, man. I like Sabine River. It's the only reason it doesn't look good on paper is it may not have the quality of fish there. But if you look, usually most guys, 80 to 90% of the field will have a limit. And the only reason it don't look good is because we're fishing confined areas with each other. We don't have a whole lot of water to break into. It's usually a fun
playing field. Yeah, you don't have Louisiana at your disposal. So
I've been there by myself before and had a good time. Catch a bunch of fish. But I like going there. I wouldn't mind going there every year.
It's a compelling place for sure. We don't have to talk too much more about the Sabine given the topic of the podcast. But so one thing I was going to ask you. So obviously, like Ronnie mentioned a minute ago, conditions obviously mean so much in the springtime, month of April. Obviously you have water temperature, obviously weather itself, fronts, things of that nature. When it comes to moon phases, it seems like everybody has different theories. Do you have a theory as far as moon phases, what makes the fish do a certain thing, or do you even pay a whole lot of attention to that?
You know, I I I don't really pay a whole lot of attention to it. I'll bed fish or sight fish. I don't necessarily like to. I mean, I like to, but it's fun to do. But as far as tournament fishing go, it's not more my deal.
Sure.
Frankly, because I can't go find the fish I catch every day like Drew Benton and Drew Cook good, and that's what makes them so good. They'll just go out there, go find them. I can't do that. I want to know. I want to have a plan. I'm gonna go catch this fish, and then go do this and this and this. But you know, for instance, I went to Lake Murray last week or last year or last month. Sorry, excuse me. I'll get it right in a second.
Before off limits hit.
Yeah, before off limits, because I've never been there before, and I was there the week of the full moon, and there was fish coming up trying to spawn, of course. But the actual day the full moon hit, a cold front hit. The water was just then getting in the mid 60s, and then all of a sudden that cold front hit. In the next few days, the air temperature don't make 60 degrees, and we have nights around freezing, and those fish, like I said, they get back off. Now, I would like to be able to, fish a place like that where you can visually see fish and tell. I mean, how long do those fish back off for? I mean, do they back off, or do they wait for the next new moon, or will they wait for the next moon, or do they not care? So, I don't live around an area that's clean enough to see bed fish like you can there, but it'd be pretty interesting when we get there, start practicing a couple weeks, see how many have actually done and are left to do their thing. Because, like I said, they were right there on the verge of doing so. I actually caught some that were already spawned out, but that's what you have here in the South, especially in March and April, is you have this inconsistent weather. And this week's the full moon, and like I said, it'll be like last month. Today's 85, Friday's high is 60. I mean, how is it going to hit them fish in the head, and how long will they wait to go finish their deal?
We talk about the spawn and how they all don't just rush to the bank, and we talk about lake positioning. The north end of the lake will spawn first, and then it makes its way down to the bottom end, like a Lake Hartwell, for instance. Just that's because that's a north to south laying out lake. Do you, when you launch for practice, you like sight fishing? It's okay, but like you said, it's not something you want to base a tournament on. If you get in a part of the lake that you thought was going to be good based on map study and whatnot, and you start to see those fish getting more in the spawn phase, will you go test the opposite end to go see if they're going to be fitting your moving bait pattern, or if they're post-spawn or pre-spawn? Just because hey, if this part of the lake's going to be spawning, I don't have to practice. I can just run up there and I'll end up seeing them. If this whole area they're going to pop up and see them, but I need to go develop a fishing pattern somewhere else, because this isn't going to be one they're going to be leaving whatever I figure out to go spawn.
Yeah. I mean, Hartwell's a good example, because like you said, you'll be up the lake and the water be in the 60s, and you'll go down toward the dam and the water still be in the mid to upper 50s. And, Hartwell, when we were there for the elite event, I tried to do similar to what you were talking about. I had some fish on the bed way up the lake, and I went and caught them first thing in the tournament morning, and then I went to the bottom end and ran a pre-spawn deal pattern to catch the rest of my fish. And some lakes are backwards. Ross Barnett, the lake, seems to kick on before the river does. I mean, it's one of them deals where you really have to keep that in mind no matter where you go. Very little, just the whole lake just explode at one time. There's going to be sections that cut on better, or even, a pocket may cut on before the next one over. I mean, it's just one of them things you have to pay attention to the details and the fish you're catching, and kind of let the fish tell the story on the whole deal.
Brock, one thing we always do for the Pattern of the Month episodes, we talk about top baits. So, when it comes to the month of April, naturally it'll vary a little bit depending on where you're fishing. But if you could only have 3 baits for fishing in the month of April, what would you choose?
Well, one reason everybody likes April so much is that's usually when topwater, you can start throwing topwater again for everybody, whether it's a buzzbait or frog or walking baits. My 3 baits, I'm going to start out with a buzzbait. My second one would be the bladed jig, of course, and then my third would be a wacky Yamamoto Senko.
That's
that Senko is more or less, even if they're spawning or pre-spawn or even fry garters, that thing just seems to work, all phases of the spawn in April.
Absolutely.
And then I was going to ask you, you seem to be a good crankbait guy. I remember the Tennessee River in the Elite Series event, whether it's a flat side type bait or a 6-foot diver or square bill. Seems like you're pretty good at that aspect of it, but we put those away in April. So that kind of goes the variation. You can go depths there, you can go colors on the crankbaits and change those up. But when you do go over to that bladed jig, people think a bladed jig is a bladed jig, but are there certain things and certain features you like about them? Is there a certain trailer you like to make it do something that you want? Blade colors, overall chatterbait color. I know you probably keep some of that simple, but what is your bread and butter if you had, one fastball to throw down the plate for your bladed jig? What would that be?
I tend not to overthink a lot of my stuff. I keep it real simple. Literally just about the only trailer I'll use is a Yamamoto Seiko. April, I tend to use white a lot, just because, the shad spawn's coming up. Depending on watercolor, I may use a white and chartreuse. I may even use, if it's a little cleaner, I may use a green pumpkin and white. But just something that don't pop too much, but it's still got enough visibility to attract the fish. But the Seiko to me is the best trailer for a bladed jig of all time. I mean, that's just a confidence deal for me.
While we're on that, the Seiko is basically, trailer wise, it's the go-to for so many people on the back of a bladed jig, but it is a swim bait style lure. We saw you get a top 10 and a second place finish at Pickwick throwing a swim bait, multiple types of swim baits. Are you a guy, we see him around the spawn, you're either throwing a bladed jig and doing the deal, or you're trying to throw something really small, maybe or subtle like a Senko, or you see those guys go opposite and they throw big things that have drawing power, like a buzz bait, like a big swim bait. Do you ever mix in a swim bait when you're just trying to cover water and see, whether it's a 6 or 8-inch swim bait, just to see? I know it's not something you might throw a bunch in Mississippi, but I know that it could be useful at times practicing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll throw, the line through swim baits and all that. It's not really my cup of tea, but it's one of them deals where I want to add it to the arsenal. Put it in golfers, they have, I don't know how many clubs they can carry, but they got their drivers all the way to their putter to the wedge. You got to have different. You can't be one dimensional and fish on the pro level. You got to have, you got to be very versatile, and that's my goal as an angler, is be as versatile as I can. It just so happens that a lot of my catches on TV have been on a bladed jig, or if we go up north, it's a Ned rig. But being versatile is the main key of being a professional angler, in my opinion. So that's just kind of how I try to keep it. I actually have a lake not too far from my house. It's a clear spotted bass lake, and it's not very big at all, but I'll take, I go there to work on my swim bait skills and get confidence in it, because you got to have confidence if you're going to throw something, on tour.
Brock, completely unrelated to bass fishing, we're going to switch gears here. This will go up before the series starts, but we've got the Arkansas Razorbacks heading to Oxford this weekend. What are our predictions? What do we got this weekend?
Man, I think I could come out of retirement and hit the pitching of Ole Miss right now, and I'm an Ole Miss fan, and that's just what's killed them. They did this last year and it ended up winning a national championship. But I watch just about every game I can, whether it's a midweek game or the weekend series, and I don't know how I hadn't thrown something through my TV. They started out 1-7 or 1-8 in the SEC this year, and they come in Arkansas, and Arkansas's got the best program, you know, in the West right now, SEC West, and they got a good coach. But you know, talking to Bowman, I think Bowman said they had a lot of pitching issues and injuries this year. So maybe just who can outscore the other one this weekend. I don't know. I'll be watching this.
I gotta ask too, like as a former baseball player, I'm curious if this happens to you as well. Do you get to this time of the year and like start to miss it more than you know the rest of the year? I feel like, at least for myself, you get to like the month of April and it's like the only month of the year that I miss actually playing baseball.
You know, I don't think I've ever missed playing baseball. I'm just a fan of it, you know, because I quit playing baseball to pursue fishing,
Sure.
and now I'm fishing for a living. I'm a fan of it. Don't get me wrong, a huge fan. I don't know if there's many people that keep up with college baseball the way I do. I watch a lot of college baseball, not so much the major league, but you know I will in October when they get to playing hard. But as far as missing it, no, I don't miss playing as much because I get to fish for a living now, and I don't have to do all the running.
Yeah, no kidding.
I heard that the Brock's not missing baseball because he couldn't get in the batter's box in the first 7 seconds to be ready for the pitch count. You know, the pitch clock that we're gonna have to deal with watching pro baseball now. But I will have to tell on Steve Bowman. We are at our church Sunday afternoon, getting ready to head out for tornado relief, and he elbows me and shows me the score of the Arkansas baseball game as he's tracking it on his phone. I'm like, Bowman, pay attention. We're about to go do this thing, cut some trees down and stuff. I had to rag on him, but I would love to see all three of our schools. I'm an Arkansas fan, but I still pay attention to ECU baseball a ton because we are the best program in the country that has never made it to Omaha. So I'm needing ECU to break through this year, which we're top 10 in the nation, or we should be. We just knocked off NC State. I would love to see Ole Miss, Arkansas, and ECU end up making it to Omaha. That would be great. That'd be a perfect situation. Kyle?
Yeah, I mean,
you got anything for Brock before we go?
I do not. I think we got the goofing around out of the way. I think we're all good for the day.
I will say, what's your approach gonna be in the month of April when we get to these two events coming up in a few weeks at Murray, and then we turn around and go to Santee? We went to Santee last year, and we saw records fall. You know, we saw 100 pounds get broken. Sight fishing was a big deal. But that was just a little earlier than we're going to go now. What do you expect to be different at Santee this year, or do you expect it to be some of the same with how our weather's been hot to cold?
I think one of the biggest deals you'll see in the next two elite events, end of April, shad spawn, whether it's a herring spawn or just shad spawn at Santee. So I think a lot of the fish will be done by the time we get there doing their spawning rituals, and they'll be ready to feed them back up. So shad spawn is going to be the key in the next two tournaments. Big players, go ahead and get used to hearing it because you're going to see a lot of it the next couple of weeks.
Hey, I'm cool with like amazing catches in the first hour of the day for sure. On that topic of the shad spawn, because that's one of Kyle and I's favorite ways to catch them, especially because in Arkansas you don't really have the spawn because it's always flooded when we're going to go sight fish. So we end up just throwing white swim jigs and buzz baits to imitate that anyways. When that first hour of the day is done or the low light conditions fade away and those shad are no longer popping and flickering and it seems to have died down, how does Brock Mosley move on knowing that those fish are still probably around there somewhere, but it's almost like you have to have two different patterns if you cannot figure out where those shad go or where those bass go? You have the morning pattern and then you go do something in the afternoon, but do you try to follow that out as long as you can?
You know, it can be tough. You know, them fish will a lot of times will feed all night. I've never done a herring spawn, and from what I've researched, it's kind of it can be an all day deal. So you know that gives you a little hope, a little bit. But you know, as far as a regular shad spawn, you know, it can get tough after they're done doing their deal, and they can be hard to get to bite when they are doing their deal. I mean, it's hard to get them to eat something when they got so much of a real thing around. But I'm gonna go ahead and correct myself. The next three elite events, the shad spawn is going to be the big player.
That is true. That is very true. And then in the next one after Lay Lake, the Sabine, it'll be a crab spawn probably, or a flounder spawn.
Yeah,
that we'll deal with
we'll
there.
be chasing the crab spawn and weeding out through redfish instead of stripers.
Yes. Well, Kyle, Brock, I appreciate you guys joining us for the Pattern of the Month episode for April. We try to get these guys. I told Matt Airy last year when we started doing this in the month of May, I think Matt had made a top 10 every year that he's been a pro in the month of May if we've had an event there. And we were thinking about guys and we're like, Brock Mosley is rock solid in the month of April. So don't let us down. For fantasy fishing, if we pick you, don't let us down, because that's been the story of our seasons is we're no longer the expert pickers because this season's thrown us for a loop.
I hope so. I hope you're right, because every year I start out in a hole that I have to dig myself out of. And this year I'm not in a hole, so I really don't know what to do with myself. So, maybe we can, since we're not in a hole, we can make a run to Dangle of the Year this year.
Yeah, you've had a top fives in close times
run
before.
Down my roommate.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, well, you can sabotage him a lot easier than other guys who are staying out elsewhere. So don't worry. You can tell him to catch some
He
crap.
can have the blue trophies. I've come close to winning blue trophies. I said, I just want the brown ones. Give me the brown ones and I'll be okay. Everybody remembers who wins the brown ones. They don't care who wins the blue one.
Well, we know, and Kyle and I have talked about this. We said it with Brandon Lester, and you've been in that conversation. Bill Lowen's been in that conversation before, of those guys who are right there and are deserving of a blue trophy. So Kyle and I think I could speak for both of us that we're no doubt one of those, or it might happen like Lester, and there may be a flurry of them in your future. So be prepared for it.
If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. I look at guys like Swindle who don't have a blue trophy, and I keep that in mind. So if I'm supposed to win one, I'll win one day. If not, I'm at the end of the day, I'm making a living fishing.
Well, ideally for this podcast to pop off, Kyle, Brock will win both the ones in April this year, and we'll be good to go back to back. We've seen it. Hey, Stetson Blaylock got second at Hartwell, goes to Winyah Bay back to back weeks in this month, gets his first elite win. So that could happen. But Brock, appreciate you joining us for the Pattern of the Month episode on the Inside Bassmaster Podcast presented by Black Rifle, and we will see you on the water very soon. Are you fishing the Open at Toledo or no?
No, I'm not.
You're not. All elites for Brock.
Spent more time pre-fishing this year, and more time at home, and give an extra slot to the Opens guys.
Awesome.
But concentrate on the elites this year, and so far so good.
So far so good indeed. Kyle, Brock, we will see you later. Peace.
Thanks, guys.